What the? Did you see that? It's gone. I swear there was something up there.
I never thought I would be the kind of person to tell a story like this. I used to roll my eyes at anything that sounded too strange, because most of the time there is an explanation if you slow down and think. But this one never gave me that. It stayed with me in a way I can feel in my stomach now. The mistake was simple. We treated the mountains like empty space, like if you hike far enough from the road, all you have to worry about is weather, footing, and the normal stuff people warn you about. We learned the hard way that something can be out there without making a sound, without leaving a clear trail, and without giving you a fair chance to get away. 2 of us went in on a multi-day hike in the Appalachians. We came out early, exhausted and shaken, and we did not talk about what happened for long. The only reason I am putting it down now is because I know how close it was. If one small thing had gone different, I do not think either of us would have walked back to the car. This was not a stunt trip or a dare. It was the kind of hike we had done before. A remote loop that starts at an empty gravel lot, follows an old ridge line, drops into a sheltered valley, then climbs back out. It is the kind of place where you can go a whole weekend without seeing anyone, if you start early and stay away from the popular overlooks. We packed light, but not reckless. 2 tents, water filters, headlamps with spare batteries, a small stove, a paper map, and a handheld GPS that usually behaved. No big plan beyond doing the loop, camping once, maybe twice, depending on how we felt. The weather was steady. Cool days, colder nights, and clear sky in the forecast. Nothing dramatic. That was part of why we went. We wanted quiet, not some survival story. Day 1 felt perfect. The trail climbed through hardwoods, then into darker stands of pine and hemlock, where the ground stays damp and the air smells like needles. We moved at an easy pace, stopping when we wanted, sipping water, checking the map now and then just to confirm we were where we thought. We heard the usual things: birds in the canopy, squirrels throwing debris, distant water where the trail crossed a creek. The kind of background noise you stop noticing because it just feels normal. By late afternoon, we picked a campsite off the trail. Nothing special, just flat ground and enough cover from wind. We cooked, ate, cleaned up, and crawled into our tents. We slept like people sleep when they have been walking all day. That first night was almost boring, which is why it matters. We heard a few coyotes far off, the creek gurgling somewhere below the slope, and the usual small snaps you get when the temperature drops and wood contracts. Nothing that made us sit up. Nothing that made us think we were not alone. If anything, the quiet felt like the reward. We were tired, fed, warm enough, and the world outside the tents felt normal. Looking back, that normal night is what makes the next one hard to explain. It was the same place, the same woods, and yet it felt like a different set of rules. The next morning is where it started to bend. Nothing jumped out at first. We broke camp, packed up and got moving. But within an hour we both had the same feeling that something was off. The forest was too still. Not peaceful still, but blank. The wind cut out, and it did not come back. There were no birds calling the way there had been the day before. Even small sounds felt swallowed, like the trees were holding them. It was not just the absence of birds, even the small stuff was missing. No insect buzz, no leaves rustling, no distant creak of branches. When we stepped over deadfall, the crack sounded too sharp, like it rang out farther than it should. And then the quiet rushed back in again. At first I told myself it was just a lull. That happens, but the longer it went on, the stranger it felt. We were not deep in a storm or fog. The light was normal, the air was clear. Yet it felt like the place had gone quiet on purpose. We kept moving deeper, following the ridgeline. The plan was to reach a saddle by midday, then drop down toward a creek and camp lower that night. It was all straightforward on the map, but time started behaving in a way I still cannot describe cleanly. We would walk for what felt like a long stretch, and when we checked our progress against landmarks, It was like we had not covered as much as we should have. Not lost, exactly. Just slowed down in a way that did not match our effort. The GPS took longer than usual to lock in. It would show us drifting a few yards off trail even when we were standing on the packed dirt. We shrugged it off as tree cover interfering. That was the easiest explanation, and we wanted easy explanations. At one point, the screen spun as if we were turning in circles. We were standing still, looking at a rock outcrop we recognized from the map, yet the little arrow kept drifting. When it finally settled, it placed us a short distance away from where we were, like it could not decide which version of the ridge to believe. We tried the simple fixes: restart it, move to a more open spot, compare it to the paper map. Everything still said we were generally on track, which again made it easy to dismiss. But the small misbehaviors kept piling up, and that is what made the day feel long. The first sign that made me look up happened on a stretch where the trail ran close to the edge of a slope. Through a gap in the trees, I caught a flash above the ridgeline, like sunlight hitting metal. It was quick, just a moment, and it was gone. I waited for the sound of a plane or a helicopter, but there was nothing. I tried to tell myself it was just glare off something far away, maybe a distant tower or a car on a road, but there should not have been any angle for that. A few minutes later it happened again. Same direction, same clean flash. Then nothing. We did not stop and study it. We kept walking. That was our pattern that day. Notice something strange, then pretend it was not worth attention. Around mid-afternoon the trail opened into a clearing that felt like it should not have been there. It was too neat, like a pocket of open space cut into the trees. We stepped out and both slowed down without saying anything. Above the tree line, hanging over the far side of the clearing, there was a dark shape, not high like an airplane, not low like a drone, just there, still, solid. It didn't have blinking lights, it did not make a rotor sound, it did not drift the way a balloon would. It looked like a simple geometric object against the pale sky, and it made my brain hesitate because it did not match any category I could reach for. We stood there for a few seconds, and I remember the weirdest part was how calm it felt in that moment, like my fear had not caught up yet. Then the shape moved straight up and vanished, not fading, not sliding away, it just shot upward and was gone. When it disappeared, the clearing did not change. The sky stayed the same. The trees stayed still. But something in me shifted. I knew we had seen something that was not supposed to be there. We both did the same thing after it shot up. We scanned the sky like we expected a sound to catch up, like thunder after lightning. Nothing came. Not even the distant whine you get from small aircraft. The silence felt intentional, like it was part of the event. We started listing normal explanations in our heads without saying them out loud. Drone. Plane seen at a weird angle. A shadow. But every explanation broke on the same problem. It had been motionless, then it had moved straight up too fast for anything we knew to behave. As we stepped back into the trees, I noticed my own body reacting. My mouth was dry. My hands felt cold even though the air was not that cold. My heart was loud enough that I could feel it in my throat. That was when the fear finally caught up. We did what people do when they do not want to accept what just happened. We started walking faster, we stopped taking breaks. We kept the trail between us and the thought of turning around, because turning around would mean admitting we were scared. The forest stayed quiet. No wind, no birds. Even our footsteps sounded dull, like the ground was softening the impact. It was not a normal acoustic feel. It was like being inside a room instead of outside. Every so often I caught myself glancing up through the branches, expecting to see it again. I did not. Not then. But the sense of being watched got stronger, like pressure on the back of my neck. We reached the creek later than planned. The sun was dropping and we did not want to be setting up in full dark on wet ground. We picked a campsite close to the water but tucked under thick cover. Normally we would have made a small fire. Not a big one, just enough to sit by, dry socks and relax. That night neither of us wanted it. It was not even a conscious decision at first. We just did not do it. While we set up, the sense of being watched came and went in waves. It was not a clear feeling like seeing eyes. It was more like the awareness you get when someone is standing behind you in a quiet room and you can feel the space change. We kept our headlamps off as long as we could and worked by the last light. It was a small thing, but we both acted like we did not want to announce our exact position. That alone should have told us how uneasy we were. When we finally turned headlamps on, the beams looked thinner than normal, like the air was dusty even though it was not. The lights seemed to stop sooner, swallowed by the trees. I remember thinking that the woods felt deeper than the map could show. As the last light faded, the darkness felt heavier than it should have. The sky overhead looked flat, like the stars were behind a thin film. The air felt charged, the way it can before a storm, except there were no clouds and no wind. Sometime after we crawled into our tents, I started noticing a faint hum, not loud, more like a vibration you feel in your teeth. I thought it was my imagination until my friend shifted and I could tell they were awake too. I checked my watch and saw it was not late. That was part of the weirdness. It felt like we had been in that second night for hours, but the time on the screen did not match the feeling. My friend later said the same thing, that minutes felt stretched and then snapped back. The hum came in pulses, like it rose and fell, and each time it rose, the pressure in my ears followed. I kept swallowing and yawning, trying to clear it, but it kept returning steady and patient. The first pass of light over our campsite was so soft I almost missed it. It was not like a flashlight beam. It was like the whole world got slightly brighter for a few seconds, and then slightly dimmer again. The second pass was stronger. Shadows moved across the tent walls in a way that did not match the trees. The light did not flicker. It glided. Then the forest sound dropped out completely. Even the creek felt quieter, like someone turned down the volume. My ears started to feel pressure, the way they do when you change altitude fast. I remember sitting up and realizing I did not want to unzip the tent and look out. That was a clear fear, not vague. Something close was making my body say no. The hum deepened. It was still not loud, but it became physical. The ground seemed to throb, slow and steady. My stomach rolled, like motion sickness. I tried to move and my limbs felt heavy. Not numb, like cold. Heavy like I had been sleeping too long and my muscles did not want to respond. I forced myself toward the tent door, and in that moment the light outside flared brighter. Not blinding, but strong enough that the fabric glowed. I could tell my friend was moving too because I heard fabric shifting and a strained breath, like effort. No words, just the sounds of two people realizing something was happening and trying to do the basics, like stand up, like think clearly. When I finally got the zipper down part way and looked out, I did not see a beam. Not like stories. I saw a shape through the branches, low above the trees on the far side of the creek. It was close enough that I could make out edges, even in the dark. A hard outline. A clean shape that did not belong in the woods. There was no engine noise, no wind. The trees did not sway. It just hovered, silent, and the light around it did not come from a spotlight. It felt like the air itself was lit. The pressure in my chest got worse, like someone had pressed a heavy hand against my sternum. Breathing was possible, but it took effort. My mind started skipping, like I would focus on something and then lose the thread of it. Then the pulling started. It was not a rope tug. It was a slow lift, like gravity had changed direction slightly. My feet still touched the ground, but my balance went wrong. I leaned forward and my body wanted to float. For a moment I thought the ground was tilting. That is how it felt, like the world had shifted and my body was trying to stand on a slope that was not there. My stomach lurched and sweat broke out on my back, even in the cold. The strangest part was the calm that tried to settle over my thoughts at the same time as the panic, like a fog moving in. I would think, get out, move, and then the thought would slip away and I would have to grab it again. I remember grabbing a root and feeling my fingers slip. Not because the root was wet, but because my hands were not working right. My muscles felt delayed. Across the campsite, I saw my friend in the same struggle, half rising, half collapsing, like trying to stand up underwater. The only thing that cut through it was contact. I reached out and got hold of my friend's arm, and the moment I felt that grip, something in my head snapped into place for a second. It did not fix everything, but it gave us a small window where we could move on purpose. We pulled ourselves together, literally, and started moving toward thicker cover, away from the open space by the creek. Every step was hard. The pull fought us. The light followed. The hum stayed constant. But the closer we got to a cluster of rock and heavy roots, the less clean the pulling felt, like it weakened when we were under something solid. The moment we got under a low rock overhang, everything changed fast. The hum stuttered. The light outside flickered, not like a dying bulb, but like it lost its hold. The pressure in my ears released all at once, sharp enough that I swallowed hard, like on a plane. The pulling stopped. Both of us dropped to the ground like our strings had been cut. We lay there for a few seconds, breathing like we had sprinted, even though we had barely moved. Then, through the trees, the shape lifted straight up and was gone again. No sound, no wind, just absence. Slowly the forest sound crept back. The creek became loud again. A bird called once, like it was testing whether it was safe to exist. We stayed under that overhang for a long time. I cannot tell you how long, because time was already twisted. When we finally crawled out, the campsite looked wrong. When we checked our watches again, the numbers hit us. A chunk of time was missing. Not 5 minutes. More like close to an hour, maybe more. We could not account for it. We could not trace it step by step. We just had a before and an after, and a blank space in between. We tried to do a quick inventory, because that is what you do when your mind is scrambling for something practical. Count the water, count the food, check the headlamps, make sure the keys were still in the pack. We were clinging to normal routines to keep from spiraling. Gear was not where we left it. One tent stake was pulled out. A food bag was tipped over. Nothing was stolen, but it was scattered in a way that suggested we had moved around more than we remembered. Both of us were shaky. Nausea came in waves. My head felt tight, like a band around it. My friend had a red mark on their wrist, like pressure or friction, but there was no obvious cause. The strongest feeling was not curiosity. It was urgency. We did not want another pass. We did not want to be there if it came back. That was the whole decision. We did not pack perfectly. We packed fast. We left some things behind on purpose, anything that would slow us down. The goal turned into one thing only: get back to the trailhead. We started moving in the dark with headlamps low, trying not to advertise ourselves. The trail felt unfamiliar even though it was the same dirt. Everything looked the same in the beam, and the trees felt closer together. The trail climbed and dropped in ways we did not remember. In the beam of a headlamp, every root looks like a trap. We slipped more than once, caught ourselves on trees, and kept going. Neither of us wanted to sit down long enough to feel how tired we were. At one point we reached a section where the trail crossed loose rock, and the sound of stones rolling under our boots felt too loud. We paused and killed our lamps for a few seconds, letting our eyes adjust, listening. In that darkness, the silence had weight again, and we turned the lamps back on fast. The creek crossings were worse than they should have been. The water sounded louder and the cold felt sharper. We moved carefully, because a twisted ankle out there would have been a disaster, but we also moved with that tight, hurried energy of people trying to leave a room before the door locks. Every so often, we would stop and listen, and the silence would return for a moment and then fade. Once we saw a faint flash high above the ridge, far away this time, and we did not look at it for more than a second. We kept walking, hour after hour, until our legs felt like they belonged to someone else. We did not rest for long. We could not make ourselves rest. By the time the sky started turning gray, we were near the lower part of the loop, where the trail widens and you can smell road dust. That was the first time I believed we might get out. We reached the car right after sunrise. The lot was still empty. The normal world looked the same as it always does. That contrast made the whole night feel even more unreal. Once we were inside with the doors shut, I expected my body to relax. It did not. My hands kept trembling on the steering wheel. My friend kept rubbing their arms like they were cold, even after the heater started blowing warm air. Later that day, we realized how little we had eaten and drunk since the night before. It was like the encounter had pushed basic routines out of our heads. We had focused on leaving, and that was it. We threw our packs in, sat for a minute without moving, then drove. No celebration, no relief speech. Just a long drive where neither of us wanted to be the first to shape it into words. Later, in daylight, we noticed more small things. A bruise on my hip that I could not place. A sore spot on my shoulder like I had been pulled. My friend had 2 small red patches behind one ear, like irritation, and a headache that wouldn't quit for the rest of the day. We told anyone who asked that we got spooked by weather and decided to cut the trip short. That was not a lie exactly. It was just missing the part that made it impossible for most people to take seriously. For weeks after, sleep was bad. I would wake up with the feeling of pressure on my chest. Sometimes I would be sure I heard that hum, just for a second, and then it would be gone. When people asked about the trip, we kept the story simple. Trail got rough. We were more tired than expected. We decided to be smart and leave. The more you keep it normal, the less people press. And we did not want questions that forced us to either lie bigger or tell the truth and watch someone smile like you are joking. The hardest part was how it changed the feel of ordinary things. A low aircraft passing over town would make my shoulders tighten. A streetlight buzzing would make my mind jump. Even the quiet of a parked car at night could bring back that sense of pressure in my ears. The memory didn't settle into a clean story. It stayed in pieces, the flashes, the stillness, the way my body stopped obeying, the way the light moved like it was searching for us, but without a visible hand behind it. I still hike, but not the same way. I do not chase remote loops just to say I did them. I do not camp in open clearings near water where the sky is wide. I do not linger when the woods go unnaturally quiet. The Appalachians are not some haunted cartoon. They are just mountains. But they are also big enough to hide things we do not understand, and quiet enough for something to watch you without you ever knowing. People still hike those trails. They still camp by those creeks. Most of the time nothing happens, but I know from one night that not everything out there wants to be seen, and not everything that finds you is interested in scaring you. Sometimes it feels like it is trying to take you, and the only reason you make it home is because it lets go.